Indy.
Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to the 50th episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy? Happy 50th episode.
Happy for it, 50th episode, TV. I am the hero that the city needs.
Yes, is the hero the city needs. Jay is finally paying off his December daily challenge thing, and he has the Batman mask. Look, we're not going to do the voice the whole episode just because it's I don't know how much I can take seriously if we talk about Pascal Siakam and the trade for 15 minutes with this voice. But we're gonna have him talk about and introduce his award winner using this voice and everything. So we're gonna see that in the episode. He's gonna be wearing the mask the whole time as well. So he's definitely be paying it off. And by the looks of things right now, Jay's getting a little bit of a comeback in this pick. So let's see if anything changes. And maybe finally I can pay something off for February. But we'll have to wait and see. But Jay's going to be in this mask for the whole episode. Jay, how does it feel with that mask, by the way?
Feels like we've got a lot to talk about. I'm very intrigued. We have a trade, and I was not expecting it, but I clocked out of work and saw Woj pop up on my screen, and I said, to the Batcave, instantly needed to check in, tap in with Twitter/X and figure out what's going on in TV. I'm sure you're slightly excited, if not very elated with the news.
Yeah, and we're going to definitely get into it very shortly. But before we get into the episode, we do have to plug our socials. Remember to follow at TV on Basketball, of course, my personal channel. Then, of course, Jay's over there. At the Knockdown Jay, the routine jumper. That can be found in the description down below. If you're watching YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. If you're listening on any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, remember to subscribe and leave a review. That would be highly, highly appreciated. And if you want to follow along for any daily NBA content in terms of, the clips, in terms of the reminders when the episodes go up, you want to follow Hit Your Free Throws on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content out there. Jay, Batman, are you ready to get into this?
TV, it's the 50th episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. It's time for us to lock in and save the basketball community with this great episode.
Yes, 100%. And we are going to get into it right away because on the day of recording, Masai Ujiri picked a direction. January 17th, 2024, the Raptors have traded Pascal Siakam to the Indiana Pacers. Now, here are the details of the trade. Somehow the Pelicans got tied into this, by the way. That was very unexpected. But the Pacers get Pascal Siakam. The Raptors get Jordan Nwora, Bruce Brown, Kira Lewis, who was the guy that was involved in the Pelican side of the trade, 2 2024 first-round picks, one of them being the Pacers pick, one of them being the worst out of their other 3 first-round picks, and a top 4 protected 2026 pick from the Pacers, and then the Pelicans just get some random second-round pick. So that's not really relevant. But Siakam gets traded. I'll get into that very shortly. But Jay, I'm going to be talking to Jay for this one. Jay, what do you think about Pascal Siakam finally getting dealt to the Indiana Pacers?
Okay. Time to take a breather and really lock in. Okay, so I had to take a second to really read over this trade a couple of times over because the details of it are really important, but the overall fit that's incorporated with this is the most important thing overall because we understand what Bruce Brown brings to the table as a member of the Toronto Raptors, right? Small ball guy that's going to be able to step in, play a little bit of point guard, be able to play a little bit 2 guard for you, might be able to guard some 4 and 5s, clearly is not super dynamic as a threat on ball, but just fits in a lot of ways that you like. Toronto, very, very big fans of glue guys, essentially, right? Not to be disrespectful, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but Toronto likes guys who can come in and fit in the system right out the gate. That's why OG Anunoby was such a hard asset to just let go the way they eventually had to walk away from him for RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, 2 other guys who were able to kind of come in and seamlessly fit into their new roles, right? This is the rotating door that the Toronto Raptors are going through. So from their perspective, the 3 first-round picks, definitely a plus. That's one of the bigger, most notable things in all of this. But Bruce Brown being a contract that does it, I think it's a team option for next year on Bruce Brown's contract, that's very favorable to the Toronto Raptors' overall cap space situation, because we know that they're going to want to free up some money. They're going to want to be able to position themselves because they still got people to look at, right? Like, I think this means Gary Trent Jr. is next on the list, despite the fact that he hasn't been playing well. This is the next indication of what they're planning on doing, like you said, in terms of moving in the right direction. Now, for the Indiana Pacers, this is the trade everybody thought needed to happen and never thought was going to come to fruition, right? Because the biggest issue with Pascal Siakam, we've seen teams hold players hostage before. We've never seen players hold teams hostage like this. Never. I'm not re-signing with anybody this offseason, whether you wheel and deal me, what you decide to do. I'm only going to re-sign with the Raptors. Look, I get that the Raptors are the only people that can offer you the amount of bread that you're looking for, but geez, bro, let them live. So if there was any team to step in and be able to still give significant compensation this offseason while having some real upside, Indiana Pacers definitely check off that list. They need a secondary shot creator. Bad. Trying to get out of Ben Mathurin didn't last long. Ended up bringing Buddy Hield back into the starting lineup at the 2-guard position. Ben Mathurin has played some 3, so I'm not going to sit there and necessarily knock that. But they need another guy that when Tyrese Halliburton either is on the floor or even is not on the floor, they can give the ball to and say, get us a basket. They finally have a dude who could go get him a bucket, and that is Pascal Siakam. I like this trade for both sides. I'm interested to see more of how you feel from the Raptors side, and then we can kind of break down the Indiana side a little bit more in a minute.
Yeah. I mean, I've been clamoring it since, we're at episode 50 right now.
Yeah.
Where we did, like, the trade deadline special, like, maybe episode 4, episode 5 of, like, at the start of this podcast. And you already know my thoughts since then. I've been wanting the Raptors to pick some sort of direction since all the way back when this podcast started. And knowing the amount of, where the Raptors were at the time, knowing what ceiling the Raptors had, I thought that it was the logical choice to finally trade OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam. I thought that was like the next steps. And when we didn't make those trades at the trade deadline, it left myself and probably a lot of other Raptor fans confused because what direction are we going with? We know that Scotty Barnes, especially last year, was taking not like a regression, but plateauing a bit. And we just thought that these guys were kind of just halting his growth. Now we see that what Scotty Barnes can potentially be like this year so far as a potential all-star. And we see that some people like OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam are more of people from the past Raptor era that don't really fit into what the Raptors want moving forward. That's why they traded for RJ Barrett. That's why they traded for Emmanuel Quickly. That is the direction they want to go. And Pascal Siakam just feels like a thing of the past. I love the guy, one of the best Raptors of all time, but this was bound to happen. Now, in terms of the package, Bruce Brown is the most notable name. Compared to the OG Anunoby trade, we are doing this trade mostly for the picks, not really for the players involved, because Jordan Nwora and Kira Lewis, they're not going to be a massive part of the Raptors' future going forward. But Bruce Brown, I think, is going to be producing. He's going to be a regular part of the rotation. And I think alongside someone like Otto Porter, like Thaddeus Young, honestly, even like mostly like someone with like Dennis Schroeder, where they're guys who are going to be prominent parts of the rotation, but they're going to be kind of the locker room leaders as the guys who are going to be vocal and trying to have these guys learn and how these guys try to win moving forward. Like, they're going to be the ones teaching them how to win moving forward. But it's the picks that are really important here. 2 first-round picks in 2024, 1 pick in 2026. I think for the situation that the Raptors are in right now at this very moment, this is what the best possible scenario we're going to get. Yeah. And I know people want to see Benedict Mathurin thrown into the trade, Jarris Walker potentially. Even in the last couple of days, Raptor fans were like, we'll take an Obi Toppin. We'll take Isaiah Jackson. But let's be honest, it was already hard to it was going to be super hard to get this deal done, especially when Siakam made it perfectly clear to all the teams, I am not committing to re-signing to any of you who trade for me, which is already hampering the market. So in the situation that we were in right now, I think it was a good return. The Pacers get someone who fits absolutely perfectly with their roster, just because Siakam's going to be a great offensive player, but he's not going to slow the tempo down of this team. They're one of the highest paced teams in the league. Siakam loves to run. He loves to get onto the break. And like you mentioned earlier, is like a great secondary ball handler / shot creator next to Tyrese Halliburton, so not everything has to go through him 100% of the time. So the Pacers got exactly what they need. They had a plethora of first-round picks, so they didn't have to give up too much. And let's be honest, if we're looking at these picks that they get in general, they're probably going to range between 20 to 30 over the next 3 years. So it's not going to be something too crazy. But they get their guy. Sure, they don't have him as a long-term commitment, but if they're making this trade, it seems like they're confident they're able to do so. The Raptors, yeah. I just think that we talked about this before the show and earlier as well, that this trade probably should have happened a year ago where the offers are probably going to be bigger and better. But in the situation we're in right now, this was probably the best the Raptors could get.
Again, I think just overall, my thoughts on just both sides of it. Again, I think for the Pacers, let me start with Toronto since that's where we were leaving off. With Toronto, again, like you said, the treasure trove from this is they got 3 first-round picks out of it. That was what the trade was about. Bruce Brown's perfect fit on this team is not just the fact that he is technically an expiring contract because of the team option he has within the next year. It's also the fact that you can put Bruce Brown next to Emmanuel Quickley. You can put him next to Dennis Schroeder. You can put him next to Point Scotty Barnes, and he's still going to be able to produce, right? He's going to be able to work as an off-ball movement guy. He can play defense. He can guard at a high level, and that makes them dangerous. There's going to be some really interesting second-man units where Dennis Schroeder and Bruce Brown might be hounding folks for 94 feet. That's tough. That's a tough backcourt. Undersized, understandably, but that is going to be a tough backcourt defensively for the rest of the year. I don't necessarily know if this means the Toronto Raptors are making any kind of real push towards at least still being a play-in team. They are technically a game and a half behind the Nets, who are the last spot in the play-in right now. There's still opportunity there. RJ and Emmanuel Quickley have been playing relatively well since they landed in Toronto. Anything can happen. For Indiana recognizes the situation. I'm looking at the standings right now. Indiana is 23-17 tied with the New York Knicks for 8 games back in the first spot. But guess what? They're only a game back of the 4th spot where the Cleveland Cavaliers are. The same Cleveland Cavaliers who have been holding up relatively well without Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, but can easily slip at any moment. Same thing with the Miami Heat, who have had their own injury concerns throughout a lot of this season. The Indiana Pacers recognize that when you look at the structure of the Eastern Conference right now, they are going to make the postseason. They are going to make the playoffs. Just based off the structure alone, yes, they could still end up being a play-in tourney team, but I have high faith in them that they'll be able to make it out of the tourney and be a part of the top 8. They view themselves as a real playoff team. Remember, them and the Utah Jazz, another team that's been on the rise a lot lately, are 2 teams that gave us a glimpse of what they could look like playing high-level basketball last year, and then they fell off. This year, I think they recognize the talent that they have, and they wanted to build on top of that as a team that looks like they're solidified as a part of the top 8. Adding Pascal Siakam next to Tyrese Halliburton, who could arguably be in our MIP conversation a little bit later on, he's one of those guys, talking about Pascal, that he's the over-the-top riser. He's the guy you add to a team that you think is a fringe postseason team, and now you make them a postseason lock. That is what Pascal Siakam does. So whether they get out of that completely comes down to matchups. But are they going to be a threat in the postseason for whoever they face in the first round? That is for certain. And as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, they will be playing the Sixers. That's an interesting matchup considering the contrasting styles.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen teams just do this in the last couple of years. The Sacramento Kings, the New York Knicks. Sometimes it's just nice to get some playoff basketball, It's nice to be competitive in the playoffs. I know people are like championship or butts, especially when you look on the internet. They're like, oh, yes, we made this trade, but it's just a second round exit now. You know what? Sometimes you just want to be part of the playoffs, get that experience, especially for a young team like the Pacers who have, star players in Tyrese Halliburton and a lot of those guys on the team. They're a relatively young team. You just want to get some playoff experience under their belts. So the fact that you get Pascal Siakam not only means potentially they're just a first round exit, but now they're like, okay, now we can actually provide a scare to whoever we face in the first round. Does that mean we're going to win? Maybe, maybe not. But at least you're going to put a scare to the team. So I think this is a good deal for them. Some people are like, oh, 3 first round picks is too much. They didn't give away any of their young talent. Bruce Brown was a pseudo expiring contract anyway. I think that the Pacers came out of this good. And when you look at both teams in general, I'm not going to say it's as even as the OG Anunoby trade as it's been so far, but I'll say that it's a fair trade because both teams got exactly what they needed, and both teams are going in the direction that their fans want, and I think that what the organization wants in general, where the Pacers are trying to move up, while the Raptors are trying to go down. Funnily enough, the Raptors are like if you look at Tankathon.com, they have the number 6 odds at the number 1 pick, and the Raptors have a top 6 protected pick as that is going to the Spurs right now. So there's potential if the balls fall our way and if we stay within this vicinity that the Raptors could end up keeping their pick. So we'll have to see about that. Quickly before we go, shout out to Pascal Siakam before all he's done for the Raptors organization. I'm going to do my own obituary for him on my page pretty soon. But he's done a lot for the organization. It's just kind of like his time kind of ran out here. I wish it kind of ended. I don't know if you've been seeing the reports about Pascal, but apparently the relationship between himself and the Raptors kind of got sour near the end, especially with not talking over the summer and everything. So I hope things go for him well. I hope he gets his bread, whether it's in Indiana or anywhere else. Hot take, top 5 Raptor of all time. I don't know what other people think about that, but he's had a great stint here with the Toronto Raptors. Just hope he does well with the Pacers, man. Hope he does well, and I hope the Pacers actually start to become competitive.
Yeah, I like this trade for both sides. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Much, much bigger fan of the Indiana Pacers as a playoff team now than I was before. Already thought they were going to be interesting. Had them as a top league pass team. Man, I can't wait to see Tyrese Halliburton back healthy because that's obviously going to be the most important part about where this team moves forward. But this is a trade that keeps them afloat in the meantime.
100%. Again, let us know down below what you guys think of this trade. Who's the winner? Who's the loser? Or do you think it's, again, another pretty even trade for both sides? Jay, it is time to move on to the next topic. And we are now halfway through the season. We're basically at the midway point. And we are going to be naming our NBA award winners at the midway point of the season. Now, this is not who we think are going to finish off the season as the MVP. We're going to make our own award show near the end. We're going to have our predictions at the end. But this is just who we think at this midway point, at the point where a lot of teams are 40, 41 games so far played this year. We're going to see who we have as, the MVP, Rookie of the Year, and so on and so forth as the winners at this point in the season. I'm going to have to call Batman for this first one because we need Batman for the Heavy Artillery award. We're going to do it for the MVP. Jay, or Batman, I'm going to throw it over to you. We're going to go with a heavy one right away. Who is the midseason NBA MVP?
TV. There's no other way to put it. The 2024 MVP midway through the season has to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I tested this theory last podcast when we discussed the idea of how good the Oklahoma City Thunder were, and it has a lot to do with the progression of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who continues to show why he's one of my favorite players and why he's one of the best guards in the NBA. 4th in scoring at 31 points per game. 5.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists. One of the better point guards defensively in the NBA right now. One of the better steal leaders, active on the perimeter, helping this Oklahoma City Thunder team with so much dynamic play on both sides of the floor. He is the main driving engine to what has been a very crazy free throw shooting team as a collective. And obviously, his overall productivity has really changed the way we believe that the Oklahoma City Thunder play. Not to mention, according to projection stats, the Oklahoma City Thunder could indeed finish first in the Western Conference. I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the West.
Shai Gilgeous, Batman, definitely drink some water after that one. That was a phenomenal performance.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that is definitely a good choice for the midseason MVP so far. As for myself, I know this man hasn't played a lot of minutes. Sorry, not a lot of games so far this year. I mean, not as much as he should. But he's still, I believe, the midseason MVP for the way he's been able to improve his game from his MVP season last year. I'm giving it to Joel Embiid. I'm actually going to give it to Joel Embiid. You might be surprised. TV, he's only played 30 games this year. I know that. But the position that the Philadelphia 76ers are in right now, you could honestly, and if you look at the term most valuable, the way that the 76ers have looked on the court compared to off the court with Joel Embiid with Joel Embiid is like second to none. Even Tyrese Maxey has better stats, and we know how great he's been playing. He's been having better stats with Joel Embiid on the floor as off the floor, but his stats so far this year have been like out of this world. And he's doing it in less minutes, by the way, just because the 76ers are absolutely clowning teams this year. 34 minutes a game only, 35 points per game, 12 rebounds, a career high 6 assists per game, 54% from the field, 36% from three, 88% at the free throw line. This guy like lives at the free throw line, as a lot of NBA fans want to kind of clown him for. But he has that, a steal a game, almost 2 blocks per game. Embiid has been absolutely phenomenal this year. And I think the way that he's been, especially after the James Harden trade, the way he's been able to keep this team as a top 3 team in the East, and also be able to step up in the big games. I mean, we just saw the game he had versus Jokic yesterday. He was an absolute monster. He proved that he was, again, one of the better players in the league. And I think for the midseason MVP, he kind of solidified himself in that spot. So as of right now, I'm going to give him my midseason MVP.
Mr. TV on basketball has clearly been injected with Joker toxins because he thinks that he has jokes today. Clearly he does not understand that Joel Embiid has definitely not played enough on the floor for us to truly give him the MVP at this rate. We don't even know if he's going to be able to qualify as an All-NBA player based off games played, and that's definitely concerning in its own right. Something else that I think should be noted is that TV's former head coach Nick Nurse is also coaching Joel Embiid at the very moment, and I can sense a little bit of Toronto Raptors bias at this episode, in a sense where maybe that the fact that he's been able to identify Nick Nurse's ability to give Joel Embiid more playmaking chops this year, he's maybe overcrediting it in a way that may be giving him the MVP nod in a way that I don't think is as deserved as maybe it should be.
I see your point, But if there was a true Nick Nurse effect on Joel Embiid, he would be playing like 38 minutes a night. But no, he actually has less minutes this year. But I'm just, look, Joel Embiid, he saw what the discourse around last year, and this year he's gotten better. I mean, we've made the case for Jokic in previous years too. In years like where you think Nikola Jokic can't get better, he continues to be better. Embiid is putting up like averages that haven't been seen, like especially with the like more points than minutes like that he's having so far. This hasn't been seen since like Will Chamberlain. This has not been seen since like Will Chamberlain. So these are kind of like historic numbers for Joel Embiid and the Sixers so far. And it's not like the Sixers have been like really bad. They're literally like 1.5 game behind the Bucks, who have Giannis as an MVP candidate. Shai Alexander's up there for me as well, sitting with Luka. But right now, I know the game point is going to be the topic of discussion here, but I'm going to still give it Joel Embiid.
I think all jokes aside, Rob, I'm gonna put the Batman voice away for this one, just for this sake, because I think that one thing that's really important when it comes to Joel Embiid is from a per minute perspective, Joel Embiid is definitely the MVP. The fact that there was a point where he was averaging more points than minutes played is insane, and he's still in the ballpark of that even now, if I'm not mistaken. It's one of those things where you do have to really wonder in terms of his effect during the regular season. Like you said, they're blowing folks out when he's been on the floor, like to the point that like there were a handful of games where Joel Embiid was not playing fourth quarters, It was getting comically insane how much they were able to get up early through the first half. And then by the end of the third quarter, it was basically a sit job because at that point they had already handled business. Joel Embiid creates a totally different dynamic for the Philadelphia 76ers in a way that we definitely understand as a former MVP. I just think the main thing that does need to be taken into account this season in particular is, especially with the 65 game threshold being upheld, I think that I count that type of thing more this season than ever, because I think that the 65 game threshold has also created a competitiveness around the league that has now made things way more dangerous amongst the top when you do miss games to the level of what Joel Embiid has missed. If you look at the bottom of the East and the Western Conference, the teams that are bad, they're really bad. And if you look at their wins and losses, a lot of their wins and losses are coming amongst each other. Right. And I think that just goes to say that the upside for the rest of the league shows that the competitiveness is really kicking in this year in a way where not being able to meet the games played threshold, or just barely making the games played threshold, is not going to be enough to be able to punch your ticket. I understand that he's been one of the most productive players on the NBA. I also understand that he's been one of the best defensive players across the league, especially as a shot defender. But when it's in limited time, and I'm not just talking about time on the floor, I mean limited in terms of the games played as well, that's going to add up when you talk about the competitiveness across the league, especially when the Eastern Conference is very close and the Western Conference is a dogfight every year. But this year in particular, it is very nasty atop the first 5 to 6 seeds. Like, it's really compact across the board.
Yeah, 100%. Do I think he's going to be like in this conversation? Is he even going to be eligible by the end of the year? Is a
Yeah.
big question mark. But as of right now, from what I've seen, and especially taking into account the most valuable player, like the 76ers are like insanely good when he's on the court. And even like in these marquee matchups where you feel like in 76ers teams in the past will tend to fold, I feel like Joel Embiid has even stepped up his game even more. It's alongside Tyrese Maxey, who we might talk about later on in the podcast. But still, I think that he, again, Shai Alexander is a great choice for this award, especially midway through the season. But Embiid, man, when he's on the court, he has been arguably the best player in basketball. The best player in basketball when he's on the court. But yeah, you could definitely go either way. I feel like the MVP this year is like a 5-man race compared to like the 3-man race that we've seen in a couple, like in the years past, when you have like, again, Luka, Shea, Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid. So I think it's going to be really close near the end. But so having the games played is definitely going to be important. Let's see if Embiid could able to, pull it out. But again, it's going to still be difficult for him to reach that. Moving on to the next one. You don't have to do the Batman voice for this one, Jay. We're going to have Jay over here for these next few awards. We're going to go with Rookie of the Year. Now, with Rookie of the Year, I feel like it's a 2-man race.
Definitely.
It's definitely a 2-man race. I don't know which way Jay is gonna lean towards, but I'm going to throw it over to you, Jay. Who do you have as your midseason Rookie of the Year?
My midseason Rookie of the Year is Chet Holmgren. I'd love to be able to give this to Victor Wembanyama because he's the guy that I said at the beginning of the season it was his award to lose. Well, he's losing it. And unfortunately, I think that this has a lot more to do with the start to the season for the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't think that's necessarily Victor Wembanyama's fault either. If you look at the circumstances of the Spurs, playing Jeremy Sohan at point guard over Trey Jones for a majority of the beginning portion of the season is insane. Like, it's not a good idea. And there was even a portion of the season where, like, Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell were playing at point guard, where Greg Popovich was refusing to even play a point guard on the floor in certain given lineups. Now, let's make something very clear. Victor Wembanyama, ever since he really got put into this minutes restriction of like 25 minutes or less, has become godlike over the last couple of games. Like, he has played very well in minutes restriction territory these last couple of games. Very much so that it's going to make this race much more interesting, because when you trajectory of the San Antonio Spurs earlier on in the season, it seemed like the Spurs were single-handedly taking Victor Wembanyama's stock when it comes to the Rookie of the Year award, because no matter how good he played individually, his team was getting blown out by 20 and 30 every night, so it didn't even feel impactful. But things are now a little bit more interesting as we progress through the season, because this minutes restriction has really played out well in his favor, and he's really made the most of it on both sides of the floor. But my guy Chet Holmgren has been consistent the entire year from opening tip-off. He's averaging 17.4 points per game, 7.3 rebounds. We probably need to hike that up a little bit. I will admit there was a point where, like, one of the Thompson twins, I believe it was Asor Thompson, was out rebounding him and Chet Holmgren. I think we had a crazy discussion about that early on in the year.
Yeah, he was averaging like 8.7 rebounds per game in like the early parts of the season.
Yeah, like there was a point where it was getting a little ridiculous. I still think that Chet should be able to rebound at a little bit higher of a rate, but I think that for right now, 7.3 rebounds per game is still okay. 54.8% shooting from the field. 64.7 true shooting, I think, is another thing that's just super important for him, because he's shooting almost 40% from three on a little bit over 4 attempts per game. He's giving you a little bit of everything. Like, the true shooting being just about 65% is huge, because we're talking about a center that has an inside game, an outside game, a mid-ranger, plays on the perimeter, is allowed to be able to roam and work very well in transition. Like, Chet Holmgren is giving you a little bit of everything. And there's something really important that we don't talk about, but it's something that I think does need to be brought up. There's not many times that rookies are impactful for teams looking to make the postseason. You can make an argument that aside from the elevation of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander every single year, and obviously Jalen Williams has also stepped up in a real way this year as well, you could make the argument when you look at what the season the Oklahoma City Thunder had last year and compare it to this year, you can make an argument that Chet Holmgren has single-handedly become the second best player and their most important guy outside of SGA in terms of uplifting this team into what now might end the season as a top 3 seed. If you look at the dynamic of this squad, right, we're looking at a team that almost is doing exactly what the Kings did last year. The team that, yes, we expect big things from because they were able to do little things on the margin in the offseason, but we don't necessarily think they're going to make any more noise than maybe being anywhere between 6 through 8 in the Western Conference. And they ended up as the 3rd seed. Well, guess what? I think that you could make a similar argument that was probably made for the Oklahoma City Thunder coming into this year, where you could say, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander continuing to step forward, J-Dub going into his 2nd year, getting Chet Holmgren onto the floor, if they land as a 6 to 8 seed and they're able to make some noise in the postseason, get to see SGA in the postseason for the first time as the lead guy, that's a net for the Sam Presti-led Oklahoma City Thunder, where it's keep it slow and steady, right? They're currently sitting 2nd in the Western Conference, just a game and a half back of the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that is Chet Holmgren in a nutshell. Yes, SGA has a ton to do with it. That's why I have him as my MVP. But I think that Chet Holmgren also has a ton to do with that when you look at their turnaround from last year to this year with dang near the same personnel.
Yeah, 100%. It's an extremely tight race. I know Victor Wembanyama has not been especially the winning capabilities as Chet has, and especially influence on winning, but it's still very close, especially with the run, like you mentioned, that Wemby's had on a minutes restriction. He's been insane. I would have given this to Wemby if the margin of his play was just a little bit bigger. If it was a little bit bigger, if he was a 21, 22, and 11 sort of player, even though if he was the worst team in the league, I would have probably given it to him. But Chet has especially in the first part of the season, has really kept it consistent and close enough to Wemby. For me, I have to also name him midseason rookie of the year. He's maintained it throughout the entire way. Wemby has kind of been, and the Spurs, the Spurs have been more competitive as of lately as well. But he's been kind of finally getting that bump that we thought we would see earlier. And maybe it's not his fault. Maybe he shouldn't have been playing small forward basically in the early parts of the season. Maybe they shouldn't have been treating like that. Maybe he should have been passing him the ball more earlier in the season. But I think now that they're finally turning it around, maybe you get to see the true potential of Victor Wembanyama. But as of right now, that's just as of late. As of right now, I gotta still give it to Chet Holmgren. His ability to even just play big time minutes in the clutch, going up against some of the best bigs in the league, and having that unwavering confidence to shoot the ball and to just stand up to all these guys and still be a reliable force on both ends of the floor has been so impressive to see. And I know he's a 2nd year rookie, as some may say. He's been in the system for 2 years, but first year playing NBA basketball, having this big of an impact on a team who, like we talked about, is 2nd in the West, you got to give him the edge right now. I have to agree with you here. Chet Holmgren is my rookie of the year.
I think when we describe both of these players, right, Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, we talk about their seasons very similarly. There's not much of a discrepancy between the two in terms of their production on the floor. Yes, it may look different because Victor Wembanyama is a little bit more flashy. Obviously, the game against the Milwaukee Bucks, right, was it was a recent game that really kind of helped elevate his status as of late with the run that he's been on over the last few games. Chet Holmgren's consistency is really carrying him. You can make an argument that Victor Wembanyama is a victim of circumstance in terms of his rookie of the year race right now. It really is a lot more of he plays for the San Antonio Spurs, who have the 3rd worst record in the NBA, versus the Thunder the Chet Holmgren who plays for the Thunder, who have the 2nd best record in the Western Conference. There is a significant discrepancy there where he is a victim of circumstance in terms of the way his team is playing. But I think you can make an argument that if they're going to be compared similarly in terms of their overall productivity on the floor, the Spurs being 15th and the Thunder being 2nd and Chet Holmgren being the 2nd best player on the 2nd best team in the conference, that's the tiebreaker. I'm sorry. It has to be. Even if you could still make the argument that maybe Victor is the better player overall.
I 100% agree with that. Who knows what Victor stats look like at the end of the year, by the way, now that he's kind of finally getting that opportunity that we've been seeing him get over the last few games.
Yeah.
That his stats right now with like 20 and 10 could even go higher. And I'm hoping that we see that in the second half of the season. But that's more of a wait and see. If we're judging it off the first 42 games or so, we got to give it to Chet Holmgren.
Yeah.
Moving on to the coach of the year. There's definitely, honestly, I feel like there's a lot of good choices here. You can make an argument for a lot of different guys, but Jay, I'm going to throw this over to you. Who has been your coach of the year so far of the first 42 games or so, or like the midseason?
Dude, I told you before the year started, I felt like the Thunder were going to go home with a lot of trophies. I didn't think that they were going to go home with a championship, even though they're playing like a team that's looking like they trying to go for that too. But I think it's Mark Daigneault. Like, I'm sorry. First of all, this dude has been snubbed a couple of times. At least the last 2 seasons, I feel like he had at least a real argument. And last year, it was really up for debate. And I think we really discussed this in depth because last year, the rise that the Oklahoma City Thunder had to their overall productivity on the floor, it gave you something to look forward to coming into this season where we're like, oh yeah, the Thunder are going to be dangerous once they put it all together. I think the other guy that obviously comes up is Eric Spoelstra, just because like they've had injuries across the board. Bam's missed time, Jimmy's missed time, Tyler's missed time. And like, here come the Heat, the team that, remember when we did our overreactions pod a week into the NBA season, what was it? I was already off the Miami Heat. Here the Miami Heat are casually sitting at the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. But I'm going with Mark Daigneault, bro. Look, the player development across this roster is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. TV, did you know that Josh Giddey is shooting 38% from 3 when he's on the floor with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Like
That's
Josh Giddey. Now, granted, he's shooting 15% from 3 when Shai isn't on the floor, so that's pretty bad. But right, the play of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander continue to develop. Jalen Williams, Josh Giddey, Chet Holmgren, obviously. When you look across the board, the other Jalen Williams, I think when you just look at the development of this team, like they've gotten really good play out of rookie point guard Cason Wallace, right? As of late, who's just been able to step in and be a really good like 3-and-D guard. Luguentz Dort is like falling under the radar on this team after being like a hidden gem like 3 or 4 years ago. He's like slowly falling down the pecking order, yet he's still shooting the ball relatively well and playing good in this time on the floor. Like this team, like what's there not to like about this team, man? Like they're just a growing bunch. They're the youngest team in the league. They're the youngest team in the league and they're the second team. They're the second best team in the Western Conference. We're going to end up saying that. I'm going to end up saying that a lot of this early portion of the podcast because I just cannot believe how enamored people are with the Oklahoma City Thunder and still feel like even with how enamored we are with them, that it's almost still not enough praise because they've just been outstanding this year. And I think like Mark Daigneault, he makes it the trifecta. It goes Shai, Chet, Mark Daigneault. I think that trifecta together is what has made this team so special. They're going to be dangerous. And I think, yeah, man, I like the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm wearing it on my sleeves today.
It's definitely a good choice. And right now he is the favorite to win Coach of the Year as of this very moment. He definitely has a really good shot at this. But man, as of right now, I don't know how long if they're going to be able to keep this going forward. But there's just no way I wasn't going to give this to Chris Finch. Chris Finch, you didn't even mention him in the players that you had, so in the coaches you had.
Interesting.
Tell me who had the freaking Timberwolves as the number 1 team in the Western Conference halfway through the season. Absolutely no one. People started already to write them off. They're like, okay, what's the next move for this team? Because clearly this 3 of Gobert, Towns, and Edwards was just not going to work. And now we're like 40 games in, and they're still holding on to the number 1 seed. We were talking about this even like maybe back in November when they were the number 1 seed. Okay, this has been a great start. Is this going to start to falter at any point? No, they've been playing at a consistent level, keeping themselves at a top defensive level as well. I think that Chris Finch, I mean, unlike the Thunder, and I don't want to give the Thunder like too much. I don't want to put them down at this point, but they did technically get an addition to the team by adding like one of the probably the best rookie rookie this year so far in Chet Holmgren. They didn't have him last year, and he has made a massive difference this year. It was a big roster turnover, but he's proven to be very, very effective for them. The Timberwolves team, they're basically running it back from last year. They're like, we have to make use of this lineup, and whether it goes down or not, we're gonna be going down with the ship. And the ship right now is floating nicely right now. It's not like last year where it was a Titanic where it just hit the iceberg and it's starting to like kind of starting to sink. Now they've finally rebuilt it back up. Chris Finch, people were doubting his coaching abilities last year, but he's finally turned things around for the Timberwolves. And with this makeshift lineup that people again had so many questions about going into the season, he's made it work, and he's made it one of the top teams in the West, or top team in the West, one of the top teams in the league.
I think my only question about the Timberwolves would just be that, like, we thought they could be elite defensively if Rudy Gobert just got his ish together, right? So, I mean, Rudy Gobert got his ish together.
Huh? But besides Towns on the court, though, like, people were, like, worried about, like, how is, like Towns, like, if they continue this lineup, like, how is, like, Towns going to, like, where are they going to hide him defensively? Because he's not, like, the greatest defender in the world. Like, we thought that was going to be a problem, like, where Cat fits in this defensive system. But they've been able to, like, keep him on the court and, like, yes, use the best of his offensive abilities. But he hasn't been really a net negative, like, on the defensive end as well.
I think the only reason I apologize to Chris Finch for not mentioning him, because I do think that he has a real dog in this fight, being at the top of the Western Conference with Minnesota as well. I think the only thing that I maybe my only argument against Minnesota is technically a fault of my own, which is I came into the season with high expectations for the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you remember coming into the season, the thing that I said is that I think that the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to hit the over on the over-under podcast, because I believe that they are going to be playing with some of the most urgency of any team in the NBA. That's how I viewed it coming into the season, because this is going to be viewed as a make or break season for the future of the Minnesota Timberwolves with this trifecta. Throw in Naz Reid, who also makes this team expensive. This year is going to be a significant determination of whether or not they are going to be able to continue with this team as constructed. So I view this team as playing with a certain level of desperation that not many teams across the league are going to be playing with, especially when it comes to regular season success in particularly. Now, granted, they do need to make it past the first round of the postseason to be worth the money that they're spending on this team as of right now. But I think that in terms of being able to make some initial push during the regular season, you can make an argument that, like, Minnesota and the Clippers are like the two main teams, at least in the West, with a gun to the back of their head, like, yo, you better make this work this year and give us something to like going into the summer, because if you don't, there will be wholesale moves set to happen. I just think that the Timberwolves are playing up to expectation and playing up to what their talent is. If Chris Finch has something to do with that, then by all means. But again, this might just be the fact that my expectations for the T-Wolves coming into the season may be just much higher than many other people's before the year started.
That's fair. I think that either one of our coaches, funnily enough, both of ours are at the top two in terms of odds for Coach of the Year as of today, which is pretty funny. But I think that either, like, both when you look at both of the narratives between these teams, are teams that either you didn't expect to be as good as they thought they were, or just young teams just kind of like taking the league by storm. You can look at it like, kind of like both ways for this team. And honestly, both teams being at the top of the Western Conference, again, tell me, like, before the season that the two top teams in the West would be the Timberwolves and the Thunder. Not a lot of people said that. So, yeah, I think you can go either way. Again, let us know down below who would you have for Coach of the Year. Shout out to Eric Spoelstra as well. You can also show, I don't know how much you want to show off to Joe Mazzulla. He still has, like, the best record in the league up there in the East. So there's a lot of different choices. Let us know down below. Also show out Jamal, is it Jamal Mosley? Is it the coach of the Orlando
Magic? Yeah.
Mosley? Yeah, shout out to him as well. I think he deserves some extra praise as well for what he's done with the Orlando Magic. Moving on to the next award, we have the Most Improved Player Award. I think I made my my case last week, so you might know where I'm going. But Jay, who would you have right now as your most improved?
Look, man, I'm going to go two-pronged with this. I'm going to give you the guy who I think is going to win it, and I'm going to make a campaign for the guy that I think has a real case of his own. The guy who I think is going to win it is Tyrese Halliburton because of reasons that don't even need to be explained. The Indiana Pacers are insane when that boy is on the floor. That dude is an offensive engine like no other. They're calling him Baby Jokic point guard version. They're calling him point guard 2.0. Anything you can name in the book in terms of being a guy who makes the Indiana Pacers run, that is it. That is Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton is the person, despite being injured right now, that gave the Indiana Pacers the confidence to go out and give out 3 first-round picks to go get Pascal Siakam. Like, that's the dude. Like, that is the guy. If you didn't know before, if last season wasn't a big enough sample size, if you know now. So I think Tyrese Halliburton is the guy that is going to win it. The guy that I want to make a campaign for is my dog Kobe White. I'm not gonna let this. I can't come off the podcast and not talk about my boy. Come on, man. Let me look at the stats real quick. Last season, Kobe White averaged 9.7 points, 2.8 assists, 2.9 rebounds. Was shooting relatively nice from the free throw line. Did shoot okay on low volume, 4.6 3-point attempts per game. Shot 37%. Very good at the point guard position. Was only taking 8 shots last year. This year, 18.5 points per game, which is basically double of last year. 4.9 assists, basically double of last year. Rebounds, 4.4. Free throws, still relatively solid, 80s. Now, here's the kicker. 40.2% from 3, jumping all the way up to 7 attempts per game. TV, something else that I didn't even realize, my boy in the month of January, he's lost his mind. He's gone absolutely bonkers. These last 2 months, January and December, he was in full holiday spirit. My boy has averaged 22.6 points last month, 22.1 points this month. He's shooting 45% from the 3 ball in the month of January. Like, shout out to Kobe White, man. The Bulls are irrelevant. I'm gonna be real. I'm sorry to say it, Bulls fans, but Zach LaVine, we don't know what's going on with him. Brian Windhorst said we couldn't trade him for a bag of chips and a roadmap. DeMar DeRozan, we don't know what's going on with that man. We can't get him to sign a contract to save our life. While we've also got Nikola Vucevic, who we should have never had signed a contract in the first place. But you want to know who's made the Bulls a good bright spot to talk about this year? Kobe freaking White. If this guy remains on this team, I'm going to continue to watch him play basketball. And if he somehow is moved in a trade, which I don't think makes any sense, but if it were to happen, he is going to be a very serviceable point guard on a different team that's going to embrace him and hopefully, continue to build up this skill set that he's played with. But, let's be real. Kobe White this year has outplayed Zach LaVine. I know Zach LaVine's missed a lot of time, but, Kobe White has outplayed what Zach LaVine has been this year, and you can make even an argument a portion of what last season was for Zach LaVine.
Yeah. Look, I love the campaign for Kobe White. I absolutely love to see
campaign for Kobe.
I'm sorry, the Bulls are just too irrelevant for them to even...
I know, bro. I know. We're bad. We're bad.
I know. But John Kobe White, one of the lone bright spots of a pretty mid Chicago Bulls season. They might make the play-in, and it might be a lot due to Kobe White. But
don't let us do that. Don't let us do that, because then the hype's gonna lean us in the wrong direction even further. Let's just miss the playoffs and get our lives together, please.
Exactly. But yeah, no, shout out to Kobe White. He has had a phenomenal season. And honestly, one of probably my best fantasy pickup of our league this year. He saved me a lot of times. My most improved player, I don't have to go too long in it. I had a whole topic covering him last week. Give me Tyrese Maxey. Some people might think that it's because of opportunity. I think that he's finally settled himself as a member of the 76ers. And this is coming from someone who's watched a lot of Tyrese Maxey interviews. He just wanted some stability in his role that he can kind of find his way around. Whether it's a second option, whether it's the primary ball handler or not. He just wanted to make sure that he found his role in the team and kind of so he can be the best at his role. finally gets the opportunity. Even in the games where Embiid isn't playing, I know he's played a little bit worse, but he has just still been absolutely phenomenal this year. 26 points per game, 6 assists. He is becoming one of the premier guards in this league, and he has a really good shot at making the All-Star game for the first time as well. His ability to hit the three ball maybe has dipped a little bit, but he's becoming a great all-around scorer, great all-around player as well. Paired up with the Joel Embiid production that you get, then you have one of the most lethal, maybe the most lethal duo offensively in the league. So Tyrese Maxey, he has taken that massive jump this year. And I think that is worthy of having the most improved player, at least for this part of the season, be put crowned upon him. So I'm gonna go with Tyrese Maxey.
I think Tyrese Maxey is obviously a very good choice as well. His rise, especially in the beginning of the year, gave him a really strong head start in this conversation. The battle of Tyrese is going to be crazy because let's be honest,
years to come.
The year of Tyrese is here, man. Like these two guys are going to be in a dogfight for who walks out with MIP because I really think it comes down to those two guys. What'll be super interesting if it's somehow, some way we can see these two teams face off in the postseason. I'm not saying that it would be a determining factor or anything, but it would be really interesting to see the dynamic between these two teams in the postseason and how that plays out. As things are currently constructed, that would be the first round matchup in the Eastern Conference. So, like I said, the year of Tyrese could get real spicy TV. I'm really interested to see how this whole thing plays out.
Yeah, you can go to, like, again, any of those two guys, one more time shouting out to Kobe White as well, who's having a great season, probably obviously the best of his career. But yeah, these two guys are going to be battling out for years to come, and hopefully there's going to be a premier point guard matchup, not just for this year in the playoffs, but hopefully for years to come. Moving on to the next award, we got Defensive Player of the Year. I feel like as fans, it's really hard to look at Defensive Player of the Year unless you watch the games really consistently. And especially because there's not many great stats to kind of like you could do with MVP, like easy stats to compare it. But we'll do our best to try and like name a winner. Anyways, Jay, who is your Defensive Player of the Year so far of the season?
Rudy Gobert is back, bro. He's back. Minnesota Timberwolves are the best defense in the NBA. And, I mean, hey, some would argue they don't have the personnel for it. I would say when Jaden McDaniels is healthy, you put him next to a Rudy Gobert, you got yourself some real length on the perimeter where you add Anthony Edwards to the mix. I think this team is really good, but Rudy Gobert being on the back end, it helps them a lot. And he's been able to make them a more aggressive team on the perimeter where those guys are able to hawk and hound. Watch the Minnesota Timberwolves play defense. All of their communications are through Rudy Gobert. All of the funneling goes to Rudy Gobert. And boy, do they do it with real confidence, because if they're funneling players towards Rudy, Rudy is one of the best shot blockers and contestants in the NBA right now. If they're able to be aggressive on the perimeter, it's because they know Rudy Gobert is behind them. Rudy is in one of the better positions he's had in a while, because with Utah TV, we talked about this on the podcast before. The Utah Jazz had a system defensively oriented around the success of Rudy Gobert as a shot blocker and defender around the rim. But it relied on him so much that in a way it also made him a moving target, a la teams like the LA Clippers that were able to constantly expose it. The Minnesota Timberwolves are designed in a different kind of way that are able to take advantage of some of the things that the Utah Jazz did, but also exploit some of those weaknesses by having more athleticism on the perimeter to give Rudy Gobert the kind of help defensively that he's never had to this point. And it's actually really revitalized his career. Last year, we thought Rudy was cooked. This year, the boy is back. He's really playing at a high level, and I like him as a DPOY right now.
Yeah, I'm not going to go long for this one because I have the exact same Defensive Player of the Year. It's Rudy Gobert. People are going to hate that this is going to be his fourth one. People are going to absolutely hate it.
Right? They're going to find a way to give it to Anthony Davis or anybody else that, like, you just don't have to give it to Rudy again. But I don't know who else individually is playing defense like him right now.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we talked about this in the last episode too, but the Timberwolves compared to the Jazz, I feel like they're more built to like sustain Rudy Gobert's like defensive impact come playoff time, just because of the length they have on the perimeter, man. When you're talking about McDaniels, when you're talking about Kyle Anderson, when you're talking about Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mike Conley, this team is just much more equipped to have Rudy Gobert as their defensive backbone. And I think that I know we're not talking about playoffs, but this is gonna maybe be the difference between how far a Timberwolves team can go and how far a Utah Jazz team led by Rudy Gobert on the defensive end can go. So he's been fantastic this year. You just don't want to go into the paint with Rudy Gobert. And the thing is, now against the Timberwolves, you don't want to, it's not like you can, attack a Donovan Mitchell anymore. You have to attack a Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You have to attack an Anthony Edwards, who's a lot better defensively. So Gobert has been fantastic. I'm glad to see that he's back at his best defensive form. People are not going to like it, but this is going to be his 4th defensive player of the year. He is definitely en route for that.
Yeah.
Final normal award. We do have a bonus award for you after this. The 6th man of the year. It's been the highest score for most years for 6th man of the year, but there's definitely some guys that have a good case for for many different reasons. So Jay, I'm going to throw this over to you. Halfway through the season, mid-season 6th man of the year. Who you got?
I already said it on the podcast once, so anybody that wasn't listening, I'm gonna say it for the fellas in the back. Give Bogdanovich the damn ball. I'm telling you this right now. I don't care. I get that the Atlanta Hawks are saying that everybody except for Trae Young and Jalen Johnson are up on the board. Guess what? If you're willing to trade Bogdanovich, somebody go save my boy Bogdan. That boy is hooping. He is playing relatively well. I think people are sleeping on his season so far because the Hawks are not that engaging to watch so far this year. But let's keep it a bean right now. It's Bogdan and Malik Monk that are kind of going back and forth for it. And I think that Bogdan has been really productive so far this year. I think Malik Monk is going to lead the race because he's the guy that's averaging 15 points a game or something like that. He's playing really well for a team that, is good in the Western Conference for the Sacramento Kings. Bogdanovich averaged almost 17 points per game. He averaged 20 points per game in the month of December. The man is shooting kind of cheeks from the three-point line right now. He shot a lot better in his career in different time frames. But that boy Bogdan is hooping, man. And look, Atlanta, if y'all want to put everybody on Trey Bog, that's cool. But y'all better ask for some good stuff in return if you're really going to do anything with Bogdanovich. Because outside of Trae Young and Jalen Johnson, he might be the only dude that's even considered as productive on this Atlanta Hawks team right now.
That's fair, and he was definitely one of my top candidates for 6th man of the year as well. He's gone so under the radar for this team, and I know they didn't want to trade any of their young guys. They didn't want to trade they put everyone on trade block besides Jalen Johnson and Trae Young. I feel like Bogdan is just a great guy just to have around. I think they should try to keep him around for as much as possible as well, especially if you want to keep Trae Young on your team. But Jay, again, you didn't mention this guy as one of the 6th man of the year candidates, and I think that he is not being talked about enough for how good of a season he's having. Give me THJ, Mr. Tim Hardaway Jr. This guy, he's averaging less minutes this year, but he's having a more efficient season. 42% is not the best still, but he's still really good there. Hitting 3 threes a game, and averaging 18 points a game for a really good Dallas Mavericks team. Tim Hardaway Jr., as much as you want to look at the offensive production coming from Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, this guy's coming in and is absolutely kind of brick and is the perfect spark plug off the bench. The guy who can turn a 5-point lead to a 17-point lead in a flash. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been that all season long, and I think that he's been one of the more underrated heat microwave type players over his career. He's been in the league for 10 years now. I can't believe that Tim Hardaway Jr. has been in the league for that long. But this year, arguably, maybe some may say his most efficient season all around. Some may say that this is his most productive, especially in the minutes that he's been getting. So, yeah, Malik Monk definitely deserves his flowers. Bogdan, like you mentioned, deserves his flowers. But I'm going to give my 6th man of the year so far this year to Tim Hardaway Jr.
Shout out to Tim Hardaway Jr. as well. I'm kind of sad that I didn't bring him up only because of the fact that he has been playing well, especially this month so far. In the month of January, 19.6 points per game, shooting a little bit over 40% from the tray ball. I think it's on 8 or 9 attempts a game. He, like you said, definite. Him and Malik Monk, heat check and then some. They are definitely being given a real good green light this year, and you can see that they're taking advantage of it. Shout out to Tim Hardaway because he's going to fall under the radar, not just because the Dallas Mavericks have Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving already on the team, but because I think a lot of us are just wondering if the Mavericks have another trade in them. And we all know, whether you want to talk about it or not, we all know that if they do have another trade in them, Tim Hardaway Jr. will be the basis of whatever that trade looks like.
Yeah.
Now, they did not fire their arrow at Pascal Siakam, who was somebody that was being heavily discussed with the Dallas Mavericks earlier on this season. That arrow is now out of the quiver. So we'll see if the Dallas Mavericks make any other transitions. But like I said beforehand, I think one of the biggest reasons why we've been a little hesitant to really give Tim Hardaway his flowers is because we don't know how long he's going to be in the situation that he's currently in. I think the Mavericks should kind of stick with what's getting them across the field right now. But again, depending on what becomes available, we all know Tim Hardaway Jr. is the pathway to a Dallas Mavericks trade. And that's just something that we're keeping our eyes out on.
Yeah. And whether I don't know what other trade they can make now, just because you got like, the biggest names off the board.
Yeah.
But I think even if you stick with Tim Hardaway Jr., he'll still give you the production that you need, and he's just someone that is just able to keep when Kyrie or Luka need their rest, he will keep the score just ticking. He won't ever be yes, he might shoot you out of the game at times, and I think that's the problem with Tim Hardaway Jr. in past years. But he'll also have a season like this where he's an absolute positive for you off the bench. So yes, this Siakam trade didn't go through, but at least you're having one of the best Tim Hardaway Jr. years that he's had so far in his career. So I think that he is a good shout. Same thing with Bogdan, and shout out to Malik Monk as well. So let us know down below who you guys have for that award. And now we're gonna have our own little Hit Your Free Throws podcast award, because I was thinking about it. What award would basically symbolize this podcast? So the way I have this award, and I think we're gonna do this at the end of the year as well, we're gonna name this the Tyus Jones Award. Because if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know Jay's affection for Tyus Jones is pretty big. And I shouted him out a lot last year as well because of how great. I called him the best backup point guard in the league for a lot of last year as well. So he definitely has an affinity with this podcast, Tyus Jones. So we're gonna name this award after him. And what basically this award entails is the most underrated, underappreciated player of the season so far. Someone that we haven't really talked about, but someone you've been keeping your eye on that deserves more love. And then we're going to bring him on to this podcast. So, Jay, so far, midseason Tyus Jones Award recipient, who do you have?
So this is a perfectly named award for obvious reasons, as TV has already stated. And there's a handful of guys that obviously come to mind across the league, right? Another guy that comes up on the podcast a ton. Shout out to my boy Nas Reed. You know what I mean? Shout out to my boy Brandon Pajemski for the Golden State Warriors. But the guy that I'm going to give this award to is the guy who has inadvertently helped the Utah Jazz gain real steam over the last 10 to 12 games. Shout out, and I hope I say his name right, Simone Fontecchio for the Utah Jazz, man. 8.8 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, 1.4 assists. Look, I know the splits don't sound too crazy. He hasn't been necessarily balling per se. He is shooting 37% from the three-point line on nearly 5 attempts per game. And guess what? He is the Utah Jazz only real defined wing player at the moment right now. And if you look at it, the Utah Jazz have been trying to go through lineup after lineup. Will Hardy has had to play mad scientist so far this year with the things that they've had to do in terms of the starting lineup. But recently, they injected Chris Dunn and Simone Fontecchio into the starting lineup, and it has reinvigorated the Utah Jazz and has them playing relatively well over the last couple of games. If you look at it, they're currently on a 6-game winning streak. They've only lost 1 game in the month of January. They've played relatively well over the last month and a half. If you go back even to the back portion of December, coming out of like Christmas, they've been on a mini heater that a lot of people don't really want to recognize right now, because alongside the Toronto Raptors and the Chicago Bulls, the it kid team for the trade deadline, of course, is the Utah Jazz, right? Chris Dunn, Jordan Clarkson. We talked about Lauri Markkanen to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, they have plenty of guys that would have a lot of interest on the trade market. So a lot of us have been a little hesitant to recognize the recent success of the Utah Jazz because we still view them as a team that's going to blow it up at any moment. But Simone Fontecchio has been a very good cog in the system to help this team kind of stabilize a little bit. And dare I say, they could be a play-in team this year. Like, we might need to keep an eye on that. I again, the counting say too much for Simone Fontecchio, but if you watch the game, he provides a different dynamic with them having a true wing player at the 3 position that opens up so much for them, and it's really made them a more stable team over the last month and a half or so, actually.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Simone Fontecchio, man. He's also was a really good player in FIBA last year. So shout out to him. I think he played for Team Italy or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, shout out to him. He's been the Jazz are 9-1 in their last 10 games. They have been on an absolute heater. So over 500, Simone Fontecchio into the rotation, and he's been absolutely fantastic. I've seen this guy play against the Raptors. He's actually a pretty solid player as well. Oh boy. Jay, I love this award because it lets us dig into people that we don't really talk about. And Jay, I really want to give it to one person on this team, but I feel like this duo at the center position for this team deserves so much love that I'm going to actually give them as co-recipients of this award. Let's talk about the center duo in Orlando, Goga Bitadze and Mo Wagner.
I love this podcast, TV. Shout out to those guys, man. Oh, man.
Yo, I'm telling you, Wendell Carter has been out for 20-plus games this year. And you know why this Magic team is still afloat? Why they're so good? Of course, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner and all that. Jalen Suggs, we shouted him out last week on the pod. But that center rotation of Mo Wagner and Goga Bitadze has been solid as hell. And no one is talking about it. Goga has been, I'm not going to say, he has just been a great defensive anchor for this team. In the similar way, you kind of just use his 7'1", 7'2" stature, kind of like how you use Rudy Gobert. He's not going to move fast. He's not as mobile as Rudy Gobert. And, of course, that's sound defensively. But you, funnel people into him, and he's going to contest every shot. And it's going to make it difficult for everyone. This is why the Magic are one of the top teams in the league. Because someone like Goga Bitadze is just standing in there and making his presence known. Mo Wagner, in 19 minutes a game, off the bench, mind you, is averaging almost 12 points a game and 5 rebounds. This guy has been an absolute unit coming off the second unit for the Orlando Magic. Some people just saw him as a throwaway in the Los Angeles Lakers days, in the Washington Wizards eras. He has become a really solid role player over here in Orlando. His brother, again, is killing it, one of the best players on the Magic, but he has been one of the best backup centers in the league. So I couldn't give it to just one of them. I had to give it to the duo themselves. Goga Bitadze and Mo Wagner deserve to be co-recipients of this award to the point where the Orlando Magic are confident and are comfortable shipping out Wendell Carter. So
that is the best point of it all. The fact that Wendell Carter has become expendable because of the insane play of this dynamic duo defensively at the center position, that is crazy because we both know that Wendell Carter is probably more talented than both of these guys on both sides of the floor. But their overall productivity has made Wendell Carter somebody worth, at least, even if you don't trade Wendell, you at least are now able to dangle Wendell out and just see what the trade market is willing to offer. And you can do it with confidence because you got two guys in Mo Wagner and Goga Bitadze, like you mentioned before, that have been able to get the job done. Yes, getting it done by committee, but nonetheless making real noise. And this opens up a lot for the Orlando Magic. Shout out to those guys because now they've created a real opportunity for the Magic to go out and maybe make a move, right? Wendell Carter can be maybe moved to a Golden State Warriors team in exchange for an expiring contract for for Chris Paul. He can be moved to a different team to try to get a real starting point guard. Right. There's a lot of different options that now open up because of two unsung heroes holding down in the center position. This is great for the Magic.
100%. And I mean, just to shout Gogo Batase one more time, this guy didn't even get a rookie extension from the Indiana Pacers. The Magic
Right.
just picked up his scraps, and he's become a legitimately starting center for this team and playing solid minutes on a night-to-night basis. Shout out to those two, combining for like 40 minutes per game. That's why I'm considering them a unit. That is my Tyus Jones Award recipient so far this year. We're gonna have one for the end of the year as well, but let us know down below who you have as your underrated, underappreciated player of the season so far. Jay, we have reached the segments of the show which are the absolute. Yes, you can take that off. You can take a
Woo!
break, man.
Got through the big part of the podcast, man.
Yes,
Oh,
Batman,
man.
you can put your basket away. You're done fighting crimes at night. And now we're gonna be heading to the segments of the show which are staples on the Hit Your Free Throws pod, and we're starting off with the draft. Like we mentioned, we were doing the series with all the draft classes. We've done 2000, we've done 2001. Now we are moving on to the year 2022 to 2002. Jay, how you feeling about this pool of players compared to the first 2 years?
I'm not gonna lie, it has its gems, but this is another one of those where we gonna have to make water out of wine at this one, because
Yeah, I mean, you had some nice top end guys, but then once you get to like pick 7, 8, 9, 10, it kind of goes downhill from there. But yeah, this is the draft. This is the draft pool we have for today. Let us what other draft you want us to do. You know how the draft goes. Jay gets the first pick. I get the next two, and we're gonna run through it serpentine style. So Jay, you get the first overall pick. Who are you gonna choose as the number one here in the 2002 draft?
the number one overall pick has to be the player that I think ended up being the best out of the class. I'm gonna go with Amari Stoudemire with the first overall pick.
That is that is 100% fair. Amar Stoudemire was gonna be one of the top picks in this draft, and he's number one here. So nice pick there. For myself, I get back-to-back picks here. Oh boy, I just realized there's a lot of solid bigs in this in this draft. The guards, not so much. Who do I want to go with here? You know what? First overall pick, give me the man from Shanghai. Give me Mr. Yao Ming to start it off. If he only played like what 8, 9 years in the NBA, but this guy was like an absolute beast. Shaq raves on about him all the time. So yeah, Yao Ming has to be there as one of my picks. And then my second pick. Oh, this is really, really interesting. You know what? Give me a guy who can get me a bucket from the wing position. There's actually not that many great bigs as wings in this draft class as well, so I'm going to go with him. Give me Caron Butler. He'll get me a bucket. He can create his own shot. Decently athletic, over 12K points in his career. So let me go with Caron Butler.
All right, so I'm going to go with a double wing pickup for my next two. First off, let me get that boy Tayshaun Prince. If you know, you know. Come on, dude. One of the better wings in the NBA at one point. Let me tell you, if he was guarding you, it was going to be a long night for you, buddy.
Yes.
And then to bolster up the defense even more on the perimeter, give me my dog. Shout out all the smoke, Matt Barnes.
Matt Barnes as a good choice for this draft as well. He is off the board. Okay, where do I go now? Yao Ming and Caron Butler. Who will be paired up with you guys? I'm going to go with someone who Jay has a strong hatred for. Someone who has come up on this podcast quite a bit past season. Give me what Jay nicknames Boozer the Loser. Let me go with Carlos Boozer to run my four. One of the best mid-range jumpers of the 2000s and early 2010s, man. When this guy cocks it all the way back to the back of his neck and lets it go, it's automatic. So give me Carlos Boozer to run my four. And bro, I still don't know what to do with this guard position. There are not a lot of great choices here. Shout out to my boy Louis Scola. I could have gone with him as well. But I will go. I'm going to go kind of small here. I'm going to put Caron Butler at my 2. Give me someone who can just spot up there and let it fly. Solid defender as well. Give me Mike Dunleavy Jr.
Mike Dunleavy Jr. is a solid pickup. Former Bull. Shout out to the boy. Since you didn't do it and you took Boozer instead of letting me do it, I'm going to go ahead and take your guy. Let me get Luis Scola. I'm going to go ahead and put him at the 4. And at my 1 position, it's going to be a little bit out of position for him. And it's a very nasty spot. But low-key a demon back when he was on the Milwaukee Bucks. Give me, and he used to be a Chicago Bull as well.
Yeah.
Give me John Salmons.
That is very out of position for John Salmons.
Hey, bro, I used to run him at my 2 guard on the Bull. I used to run him on my 2 guard on the Milwaukee Bucks all the time. So he's gonna be running the 1 today. But look, we'll be all right. I mean, hey, it ain't that many guards they draft in this draft class anyway. So I'm gonna just go with a notable name off 2K that I know I can rock with. John Salmons used to abuse him using the Milwaukee Bucks back in the day.
I don't. What do I go with?
He's gonna get stuck using Jared Jeffries.
What? No, that is not gonna happen. You know what? Solid role player for 10 years. Kind of, I wouldn't say kind of played the 1, but he's kind of like, at least I trust him out of a lot of guys here. Jay Williams barely played in the NBA, so I'm not going to go with him. I'm not going to go on Dixon. Shout out to the former Raptor. Let me go to the second round. I guess I'm going with him. Roger Mason Jr. Roger Mason. Yes, he will be running my 1. He can hit the 3 ball. He'll hit the 3 ball. He can handle the ball a little bit. You're just going to have to, hopefully just dish it out to the other guys and let Boozer just hit 15-footers all day, every day. And then that's how we're going to win our game. So I'm going to have Roger Mason running my 1. That was an underwhelming end to the draft. I'm not going to lie. Definitely an underwhelming part. But let's go through our lineups. Jay, who do you have as your best drafted team from the 2002 draft?
All right, so my NBA 2002 draft consists of a very obscure name at the 1, John Salmons, a more notable name at the 2, Matt Barnes, Tayshaun Prince at the 3, Luis Scola at the 4, and Amari Stoudemire at the 5.
Very, very okay lineup. And don't worry, mine is just as okay as yours. At the 1, what a fantastic point guard matchup. You have John Salmons. Let me raise you a Roger Mason Jr. Then I'm going to have Ferron Butler running the 2, Mike Dunleavy Jr. running the 3. We have Boozer the loser, Carlos Boozer at the 4. And, of course, we have the Great Wall of China, Mr. Yao Ming running the 5. Some guys I want to shout out from this draft that I couldn't even consider just because there's just too many bigs on this team. Drew Gooden, Nene. I'm so mad I couldn't get Nene on this team, but where are you gonna put him? And yeah, just there's a few other bigs here as well. So yeah, great lineup. How do you feel about your team?
I feel better about my team knowing that we definitely took the most talented players on the board.
Yeah.
I mean, across the board, when you think about who did and didn't get taken, especially when considering their actual NBA career, right? Jay Williams would have been a very big pickup had things been different for him. But when we're considering NBA career, obviously that's where things get derailed. I think, if you had to talk about snubs, the biggest snub is Nene. I think other than that, I think we took the best players in this draft. I think we did good considering that this draft class a little mid, but TV. Guess what year is next week?
Woo! We have,
buddy.
This is gonna be a nasty draft, and you're gonna want to look at that going to next week, the 51st episode. Also, shout out one more person I want to shout out from this draft. This guy was a beast overseas. I just saw him on in the draft here. Juan Carlos Navarro. I don't know if you know him from the old freaking Spanish teams, but this guy was a freaking baller. Just sadly, he just couldn't really get much going in the NBA. But shout out to Juan Carlos Navarro. Also, if we were drafting international versions of these guys, he would be an easy choice here. Moving on to the final segment of the show, we have the NBA quiz. You know we love a good quiz over here. And Jay, in honor of the 50th episode, I'm gonna need you to name me the top 10 players with the most 50 burgers in NBA history. So whoever had the most 50-point games in NBA history, I'm gonna need you to name me the top 10.
Ooh, TV, you scared me for a minute there, buddy. I thought you were gonna have me name 50 players. I was scared.
No,
Ooh.
Loki, like what I was thinking about is like, I hope this guy doesn't think like he has to name like 50 players. But yeah, the top 10 players who had the most 50-point games. Let's see if we can get them.
So there's 10 of them. All right.
Yeah.
That's good to know. We gotta assume Jordan is there.
Number 2 on the list. He has 31.
Who else is there that's like obscure? Well, Wilt's gotta be here.
Wilt is number 1 on this list with a bullet. He basically almost quadrupled Jordan's. He has 118.
Yo, that's just wild to hear out loud, bro. That's just, oh my god.
118 50-point games. I mean, to be fair, he averaged like what, 51 or 52 in the season? Yeah.
Is Kareem on the list?
Kareem is the first guy off. He has 10.
Okay. Is Shaq on the list?
Shaquille O'Neal. I don't think he was near the top 10. No. Funnily enough, he's not near the top 10.
Wow. Huh.
I bet you when we think like 30 and 40-point games, Shaq is up there. But I
was gonna say because I'm obviously thinking bigs before anyone. That's my thing. Kobe's got to be on this list.
Number 3, Kobe Bean Bryant with 25 50-point games.
Valid. LeBron's been around too long. He has to be on this list.
Number 7 on the list. He has 14 of them.
There we go. Who else is like going crazy that we get there? Oh, 50-ball triple doubles and stuff. James Harden's got to be here.
Number 4 on the list. He has 23, 2 behind Kobe.
Kevin Durant.
Funnily enough, he's actually not on this list. I think I think it took him forever just to even get his first 50-point game, if I remember correctly. So
okay.
Yeah, he is not on this list. Actually, no, never mind. He's second off. So he has 9.
Dang. Okay. What about is Steph on the list?
Number 9 on the list, Stephen Curry.
Clutched it.
12 50-point games for Mr. Wardell, Stephen Curry.
Who else just a straight bucket getter that I could think of that also played long enough and played enough minutes to get mad 50 balls?
So you have 4 more guys on this list? 4 more. You have 2 post 2000 and 2 before 1980.
Whoa. No pressure. Okay. So we got before 1980.
Both guys they put up buckets. It's just you just don't you don't really think of them as all-time greats, but they definitely have that distinction. They are one of the better wings of all time. I'll say that.
You don't view them as all-time greats?
No, they're 100% all-time greats. It's just
okay. I was gonna say
just because it's from back all the way back then.
I think I'm getting the dates wrong, but is Bernard King here?
Nope, he was more post 1980, but he
okay, cool.
Funnily enough, he is the fourth or fifth guy off the list. He has 8.
All right. Elgin Baylor has to be here.
Baylor, number 5. He has 17.
One of those guys that never won an MVP because he was just in the wrong era, man.
Were you competing with freaking Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain your entire career? That's tough. That is tough.
No freaking chance in hell, man. It's not even safe for you. Let's think. Yeah. Who else is here? Is Dame here?
Damian Lillard, number 6. He has 15. 15 50 burgers for Damian Lillard.
Is Luka here yet?
Funnily enough, he already has 6 in his career. That would make him 16th or something, or 17th. So
not great, but it's up there.
It's up there.
How many more am I missing?
You're missing 2. You're missing one more guy pre-1980, and you're missing one guy post-2000.
Pre-1980, and the other one's post-2000.
I don't think the guy pre-1980 won many championships, but this guy was known for having one of the more interesting ways of scoring.
See, when I think interesting, I think of like random people like Jack Sigma. Jack Sigma's not on this list, so that's not gonna work.
50-point burgers from Jack Sigma. Love to hear it.
Yeah, that's wild. I think what was it like post 2000 has to be like AI or something, right?
Number 10,
All
Allen Iverson.
Backpacking squads. I'm not even surprised he had to score 50 that many times. How many?
11 50-point games.
Okay, so we're missing one guy.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be the hardest on the list. I know when it came down to it, I knew this was going to be the hardest. He was the original Warriors legend.
Oh, Rick Barry. Okay.
Rick Barry.
I didn't think about the time frame when you said that too, though, because original Warriors legend can mean a lot of things depending on which time you're talking about. So,
yeah, but yeah,
like a dunk contest, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or his son won a dunk contest.
Brent Barry, I think, did. Yeah. But yeah, Rick Barry, he had himself 14, tied with LeBron, 14 50-point games in his career to round out the list.
Yo, what?
This guy was a baller back then, shooting freaking underhanded free throws. So shout out to Rick Barry, man. Shout out to Rick Barry. But yeah, that's the quiz for today. Let us know down below what other quizzes you want to see. You might see some new quizzes coming back in the next couple of weeks, so be on the lookout for that when listening to these episodes. But Jay, episode 50 is in the books. We're here. We made it to the end. What do you tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Man, I wore a Batman mask. It's episode 50. We got a trade this morning that we got to reveal on the podcast. We got to give you guys some lovely updates on our NBA awards. Lock in, dude. If you're not locked into the Hit Your Free Throws podcast yet, you are behind schedule because things are only going to be kicking up as we continue through to the trade deadline, pushing to the postseason. Like, we are in perfect form right now. Like, we are really making a strong push for the NBA season as we go along, and I'm enjoying every second of it, to be honest.
Yeah, the season has been absolutely fantastic so far. And I know the trade, we've had some pretty big trades so far, but the NBA trade deadline is just around the corner. Next week, they're announcing the starters for the NBA All-Star game. So very soon, we're going to be going through our NBA All-Star reserves. Of course, the playoffs are around the corner as well, so we're going to look into that. We have a lot of great episodes coming up for you, and you want to be locked in to Hit Your Free Throws podcast, so you will not miss any of it. But yeah, remember to check before we end this video. Remember to check out our Instagram and TikTok. Make sure you check us out on any of the podcast networks. Check us out on YouTube. Our individual accounts will be down below as well. Just so it's more than possible. We appreciate all of you. But this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay signing out. Take it easy, guys.
Peace.